All right, let's get started. Again, welcome to the webinar. My name is Jeff Parentozzi. I am the practice lead for data analytics at InOutsource. And today we're going to be talking about data analytics and data in general. And this is the first in a series of webinars that we are collaborating with ILTA on. And going to go through some high-level concepts today, as well as some of the challenges that we have seen, and I'm sure many of you are facing when it comes to the amount of data, the growth of data, and how to turn that into actionable intelligence for your organization. So again, this is the first of three. We'll get into some more detail on some of those later webinars, and we'll be looking for some feedback from you as we finish up today around what maybe you might be interested in as we go into those other webinars. So, quick overview of InOutsource. Sorry, I got muted there for a second. Quick overview of InOutsource consulting organization. We focus primarily, almost completely on the legal industry and have for the past 20 years. We do a number of the things that you see on screen, from risk management to information governance. And what we're primarily going to focus on today is the analytics piece. A lot of firms have a lot of data, and I'm sure all of you are aware of that, and looking for solutions or looking to evolve your solutions as we go forward into 2021. And some of the things that you see on screen, partnerships that we have, there are plenty of tools out there when it comes to analytics and data and managing data and moving data and governing data. And we'll talk about some of those today. Some of the ones that we favor and have done a lot of work with, you see at the bottom there, Click and Alteryx, and the Right Data tool. But a lot of the other things that you see that we are partners with there at the bottom, Intap, FileTrail, iManage, they are systems that manage data and information. And what our experience has been with law firms is it's complicated and only getting more complicated in terms of how to manage all of that information that is either you're generating within your organization, that purchased from third-party providers, or is stored in all of these systems, whether it's on cloud or in the cloud or on premises or wherever it may be. And we'll talk about some of those challenges today and how we see them getting worse, and I'm sure all of you see them getting more challenging as we live in a world where remote work is probably here to stay. As we've all been forced into that mode a little bit more maybe than we were before the pandemic struck. So just some housekeeping things. Everyone is muted right now, but if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand, throw that question in there. We've got some folks from InOutsource, Kel Jackson and Alicia Bayarski are helping out here. They will monitor some of those questions, and we'll do our best to answer any questions that you have throughout the course of the webinar today. There's one poll question we're going to ask, so it is going to be a little bit interactive today, and that'll come up on your screen at the appropriate time. And your webcams are not active. You can see me. Got a chance to put on the tie today, collar or shirt, but I cannot see you. So to start off, wanted to start with maybe some sound bites at a very high level. I think everyone is aware that data is everywhere, and it is growing, and it's critical. I think what we have seen throughout the course of this past year, and it is a continuation of things that we have seen over the course of 20 years and working with law firms, is that data continues to grow, continues to get more complex, not less complex. The data quality hasn't magically solved itself, and data isn't taking care of itself such that everything is uniquely identified and you know exactly where to go to get something within your organization. But some of the things that you see on screen, so in the entire world, evidently, we are generating 2.5 quintillion bytes of data every day as an estimate. Maybe less so on Saturday and Sunday, but maybe more so during the week. And that is, that's all types of data. That's not specific to law firms. But I think that's indicative of the overall trend that we all see and that we have seen at InOutsource, and that is data continues to be generated more and more quickly, whether that's because more devices are coming online and Internet of Things, or whether it's the machines are doing more of the work. So you have artificial intelligence and machine learning platforms out there that you're feeding your data into, and they are working on that data and drawing conclusions and returning that data, whether it's the computers generating more information or whether it's the firm and human beings generating more information. Some small component of that really long number that you see there on screen is being generated by law firms on a regular basis. And there's not less zeros being added to that number. I think we've seen and continue to see that more and more data is being added. So there's more zeros being added there rather than less. And why is that important? I think that second bullet point there, I'm sure everyone is aware at some level that data is the lifeblood of your organization to some degree. Maybe not as, I think within the legal industry, it is a key component to competitive advantage, your intellectual property, the ability to build the right team at the right time, who has worked on this type of matter or for this type of client or in this type of industry, in this jurisdiction for that judge, et cetera. All of that information can be competitive advantage. It could be your intellectual property. It could be how you end up 23 times more likely to acquire customers if you are harnessing the data within your organization or data that you've purchased, making you 6 times as likely to retain customers and 19 times as likely to be profitable. So the indicators are there in general that the more control and the more ability you have to manage your data, put it into the right people's hands so that it becomes actionable intelligence is a positive thing and can lead to positive things for your organization. So I did want to take a quick pause there, maybe go take a trip down memory lane quickly. So I mentioned that in outsource, I've been working with the legal industry for 20 years. We've also been doing data and analytics and data governance, information governance for a good component of that time. But maybe 5-6 years ago, we really wanted to focus on the data piece in addition to documents, et cetera. And we took a real close look at the market and found some tools we thought were good ones to have and good platforms for helping law firms to manage data, analyze data, and turn that again into actionable intelligence for the organization. And we'll talk a little bit about those. But from 5 years ago to today, the number of tools that are available to do everything from capturing data to massaging that data to cleansing that data to visualizing and analyzing, whether by humans or by the computer, the number of tools continue to expand. And it takes any organization, it takes a significant amount of time and effort to determine whether or not these tools are really going to add value to the organization. And what we have seen through our work with law firms and sort of going along the journey of managing data and doing analytics with some law firms is that it's really need to think about it from both a strategic as well as a tactical sense. Hey, what does our long-term vision look like for data governance and data analytics? While also, hey, what are those projects that we could do right now? What are those use cases that would help us to demonstrate value for these tools, either in terms of maintaining client relationships or winning new business, or even streamlining operations of the organization? And I guess the point I want to make is you're about to see a plethora of tools on the next couple of slides. And what I want to mention is, we haven't seen one firm implement all of these tools. And again, there's plenty of them out there. And I think what we have positioned ourselves as and the relationships we have with our clients are, we'll work with you to figure out which one of these tools is the right one for your organization. And I think that has been the approach, is that sort of buying a bunch of new tools and trying to use them, put them in your organization. Historically speaking, we have seen if there isn't a specific use case and some goal you're trying to attain with data analytics, the tools really are just tools. They're sort of in your tool bag to help you accomplish specific use cases or improve operations or gain more business, whatever it is. And it's an ongoing journey, I guess, has been our experience. So to talk a little about some of those tools, there's a lot of different icons that you see and names on the screen. But generally speaking, we characterize them, and this was lifted from the internet. So these is sort of an overview of all of the tools that might be available and might be of some use to your organization. Some of the ones that we have seen and helped law firms implement for specific use cases or as platforms within their organization are things like Click and SciSense. You can see some of the other ones in here that you're probably familiar with: Power BI, Tableau, SAP tools. A lot of those BI platforms and visualization, they're sort of in boxes here on the screen. They do crossover. I'm sure Microsoft would say that they are a BI platform. It's just a way of categorizing those things. But some of those things around BI platforms and visualization tools are things that you may be already using within your organization. I know we have worked with organizations to implement those. And that is a great way of getting data from wherever it resides and getting it into the hands of your citizen developers or your citizen data scientists, or even just your everyday data analyst, or even just business users that need to take that information. Maybe it's financial information that the partners want to see. Maybe it is metrics on how new business is being identified, how many conflict searches that are being run. But there are other tools that also help in the ongoing process of managing all of this data. And some of the things that we have done, you see there at the bottom in the data science platform, you see this IBM Watson Studio. We have recently been working with some clients to use the Watson Studio. Watson Studio gives you tools for doing machine learning and artificial intelligence. So we specifically have used it for natural language understanding, where it can help you identify proper names or to take a case alert or a litigation announcement and bring back some of the information from within that, the text of that documentation or alert, and pull that out and again make it into something that is more actionable for your firm. You see some of the other ones on there. I'm sure that some of your organizations are already working with some of these, maybe many of them. But again, there's a whole set of them that are out there, and there might be specific use cases for each one of those tools. You might want to use a Power BI or a Click, Tableau for doing the analysis work. So once you've prepared all that data and got it into your analyst's hands, that might be the tool of choice on the sort of right-hand side of consuming and using that data. You might use a tool like Alteryx as part of the process of pulling data from source systems and managing it and massaging it into a place where you can be certain of the data quality or the quality of the data that is being fed to those visualization tools. And you might have thought we were done with tools, but no, there are even more tools out there that may be already in use in your organization. Some of the things that we see, you see that log analytics in the middle of that bottom row there. And parts of your IT organization may be using that from a security perspective in terms of endpoint protection, who's accessing what documents, etc. There might also be places within your organization, and some of these tools may be embedded in tools that you already have. Elasticsearch we have used for a number of clients to, again, have the computer do some of the work of matching up information coming in from case alerts, et cetera, to client list, et cetera. So instead of a person having to match those things up to be able to turn a case alert into some type of actionable intelligence that an attorney could take, have the computer do some of that work for you. And Elasticsearch is embedded in some of those tools that we talked about earlier, like FileTrail and Intap, et cetera. So some of these tools you may be using within your organization. Specifically, you'll be using them to do enterprise search across your whole organization, or they might be embedded in tools that you already have. But I think as we talk about all these tools and you see all of these things that are out there, I think what we have seen is the number of tools available to you continues to grow. and they may have specific applications, and really identifying and evaluating those tools for, hey, this is the use case we're trying to fit or trying to solve. Whether that's how do we manage all of the new endpoints that we have now that we're all working remotely? How do we manage all of that? How do we make sure that systems are being used in the way that they're meant to be used? Some of these tools may help in that journey. Again, though, all these tools that you see are just that. They're tools for helping to manage your data, harness that data, and put it into the hands of the people that can take action on that information, and hopefully getting it to them in such a way that, hey, we know that this is the correct data, as correct as we can get it, into the hands of the people that need it to make those decisions for your organization. So I did want to start a poll there real quickly in terms of maybe some of these boxes that you or your firm are currently employing or plan to employ as you move into 2021. Hopefully that has popped up. I see some folks clicking on some things as we are going through. Just to call to attention to some of the other tools that we have worked with as you guys are clicking on that. One of the tools that we run to is Prophecy. Some firms are using that from a master data management perspective. We'll talk a little bit more about master data management as we go forward from a data governance perspective. So it looks like a lot of folks have used BI platforms, visualization platforms. And interestingly enough, it looks like a lot of folks are using machine learning as well. So many of these tools you may be already familiar with. So this is sort of the whole marketplace of tools that are out there. And to get a little bit more specific to law firms and the legal industry, I think I'll move on from the poll at this point. We're about 48%, about half of folks have voted. So we'll continue on with the slides as we move forward in our conversation. So one of the things specific to your firm may be that you have information stored in a number of different places. This has been our experience with 100% of the law firms that we have worked with, that your information is stored in a couple or many, actually, in many different places. And they maybe can be dropped into two different buckets, legacy and modern systems. So you see this map over here on the right. Information, not only does it reside in locations, it travels from location to location. Email is still used. So email is, a big culprit of how information can move from one location to the next and change along the way. I'm sure that all of your firms have some of these tools in place, collaboration and communication platforms, file storage, whether that's local network storage or out in the cloud, OneDrive, Dropbox, Box, whatever those tools might be, both at an enterprise level and maybe at an individual level as well. But I think this slide, the intent here is there are the ecosystem of the information that you have and the data that your organization has is stored in a complex web of interactions among those systems. And as I mentioned earlier, those without guidance and curation and standardization, the number of systems, the amount of data, and the interactions among them, what we have seen is only going to continue to get more difficult or more challenging to manage going forward. And you also have the, some things that maybe aren't as top of mind. You may have a bunch of information stuck in legacy paper somewhere, and maybe that is valuable assets for your organization. How do we incorporate that into our overall data management strategy? And if there is important information out there, how do we get it in such a format that we can add it to an analytics solution? The other piece here down at the bottom, the information arrivals and departures. A lot of information is available publicly or from vendors. How do we make sure that as we're pulling that information in, that one, it is protected? How do we as a firm manage outside counsel guidelines and managing data that we pull in from others? How do we manage the data that we send out to other organizations? All of that sort of goes into what your, I guess, data governance or data management solution might be. And all of those pieces in terms of how this information moves around, what the definitions of that information are, what system of record contains that information, even what the organization defines a piece of information as. So what is an active client to our firm? Or what is the new matter? Or who is the responsible attorney? All of those definitions, again, may be things that are known within your organization, or there may be points of contention in terms of it means this to that person, it means the other thing to this other group. But I think concept here being it's difficult, it's going to get more difficult, and specific challenges may have come up just over the course of the past 9 to 12 months specific to, hey, you know what, all of our attorneys are now using our systems more than they used to, just based upon the fact that we're all working remotely. So part of what we saw there in one of those earlier slides from that McKinsey study are a data-driven organization, generally speaking, can win more clients, can be more profitable, can have more streamlined operations, can make better decisions when you have the data available. What we have found, and this probably is not news to anybody, is that it requires both diligence and rigor to get from where we're just making decisions based upon history, what individuals know, versus making decisions based upon all of the available data from within the organization, and the correct data or high quality data from within the organization, so that you're making a decision based upon not just what a feeling is or what has happened historically, but all of the information, historical, current, and as accurate as that data can be, so that decision can be as well informed as possible. So we break that down into a couple of things in terms of how to get to a data-driven organization, and that is data discovery, data wrangling, data analysis, and data quality and governance. You probably heard terms for these similar concepts, maybe some different terms, but really the data discovery is an ongoing process of where is your data, and it also includes not only, hey, where is our data, but hey, we are considering this new data point, or hey, we heard that this third party has really high quality data that would help us in this way, and managing that process so it's not just, hey, we went and let's go get this data, but put a process in place to say, all right, let's assess that. How's it going to fit into our overall data governance and data ecosystem, and what does that look like, and what are the impacts of getting that additional data? But also data discovery, at least the way that we view it, is the data movement and data enrichment process as well. So we saw in the previous slide, data is going to move around your organization. What controls can you put in place to make sure that it's moving in the right directions? It isn't taking the wrong off ramp or the wrong turn along the way and being enriched in a way that maybe leads to poor decision making based upon that data. And the enrichment process, again, is just analysts, people thinking about the data that they see, drawing conclusions from it, drawing insight from it. And what does that look like? What are those processes within the organization? What are the tools available to your organization for that? So data discovery, there's a lot there in terms of moving towards a data-driven organization. And data wrangling, that is, how do we get the data from wherever it is, whether it's third party on the web, whether it's our internal system, how do we capture that data? How do we make sure that the capture process is resilient? Hey, the web service goes down. How do we get that data? And is there some way to recover from that fault? Ensuring accessibility to the data. So obviously, if the people that are making decisions can't access the data, or they only see data from a certain period of time because something went down, that is obviously a critical component, having access to the data to help make these decisions. And then data analysis. So that is exactly what it sounds like. We've got all this data. We made sure we know where it is. We know where it's coming from. We made sure that the pipelines to get it into the right people's hands are resilient and secure. How do you do the data analysis? And how do you inspect the data, cleanse the data, transform it in such a way that it goes from raw data, ones and zeros, or documents sitting in a data warehouse, a data lake, wherever it happens to be, and get to the point where you are drawing informed conclusions and supporting the decision-making process. And then that last piece, you may already have initiatives in place for improving data quality or governance within your organization. Typically what we find, so the intersection of information governance and data management is sort of the data quality, data governance, where you might have a lot of controls in place for where you store documents in your DMS or hard copy or whatever the case might be. Sometimes because data can be moved fairly easily, somebody connects to a database, drops off spreadsheets gets emailed around. Managing the governance of data and data quality, sometimes a bigger challenge because the accessibility tools make it very easy to manage or to move data and extract data from source locations. But how do you manage all of that such that minimizing the chance of data being enriched or changed in such a way that leads to a faulty decision or data that cannot be relied upon to make a decision? So some 101 things, most of the folks probably on the phone probably understand all this, but just to talk a little bit about data and things that we think about from a data analytics perspective. So you have structured data and unstructured data. Structured data sometimes can be easier to work with. It's stored in rows and columns. If anyone has worked with an Excel spreadsheet, you're probably familiar with structured data, right? So you might have pivot tables, whatever you're familiar with. But generally speaking is most often characterized as quantitative data, and it shows up in a way that is structured, and the structure of the data can either be rigid or flexible, but allows it to be understood in such a way, hey, this is the column that it's in, this is the row that it is in. That structured data, again, can only be stored in the particular structure that has been prescribed for it. Most of your transactional systems are storing data in a structured way, whether that's a database or a data warehouse or some other location. Unstructured data, again, this is some older definitions. Unstructured data has been around for a while. 80% of your data generated today as an estimate is going to be unstructured. So it's not going to be sitting in a database in a well-structured format. It's going to be captured in documents. It's going to be JSON that comes in from an XML feed. Some different ways of storing information, but are less structured. So it might come in as an email, it might come in as a text. It might be come in as, hey, we recorded a webinar and there's very important information and decision making that we made in that. And now that becomes a record and information that needs to be managed throughout your organization. Social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, et cetera, all those places that your organization may be concerned with in terms of marketing, public relations, et cetera. That last piece, server and web logs, again, from an IT perspective, very important. They're becoming more important as we move into a remote world, and obviously data security continues to be something that we are all concerned with. Where is data stored? I won't go into it, but if you've ever seen Zoolander, if you haven't seen it, I would say go check it out. Very funny movie, but this particular clip is this gentleman is looking for the files in a computer, and he picks up the computer, throws it on the floor, and the files don't come out, and he's asked the question, hey, where are all the files? Sometimes it is difficult to find information, but our experience has been it's actually easier and easier now. Everyone's got an API, everybody's got some way of exposing data, and that is a two-edged sword, a double-edged sword, sorry. There are, when it's easier to get to data, maybe you can do analysis a little bit more easily because it's not that difficult to get data from all the source locations within your organization into a place where analysis can be done on it. Flip side of that is, if it's easier to access data, that might get it into more people's hands. And if it's not done in a structured way and a controlled way, you could lead to data proliferation across your organization that may lead to data quality issues over time or even immediately. So now that you've found all of your data, it's time to call in Data Wrangler Joe here that you see on the slide, who is wrangling up some of those zeros and ones that are running around your organization. And we haven't even gotten into quantum computing yet, where zeros and ones, there's also like a 0.5 in there in terms of processing. 5 years from now, maybe that's all we'll be talking about. Right now, we have enough to worry about just with the ones and the zeros. So once you have found all your data, what do you do with it? Or if you got this use case, we need to figure this out. We need to gain competitive advantage from the fact that we've been doing cases in various jurisdictions for 15, 20 years now. How do we capitalize on that information so that we are winning more cases, maintaining our client relationships? So some of the steps that we typically follow are, what are the requirements? What are you trying to solve? What is that use case? What is that user story? All the same words for, here's what we're trying to solve. And here's the goal that we're trying to get to with this data. And generally speaking, that is, we see more success from taking it from a, what are we trying to do with the data, rather than, hey, we have this data, what do we want to do with it? If you set the goal or the problem you're trying to solve or the answer you're trying to get to, that tends to help the rest of the process along in terms of data collection. How do we go and find that data? What pieces do we need? Hey, we need it from this place, we need it from that place, we need to go get this other information as well. And then the data processing, so that how do we make sure that that data is being pulled in on a regular basis? How do we make sure that it is high quality data? How do we secure those things and make them resilient such that the information can be relied upon? And then data cleaning, your Wrangler may also be a part-time data cleaner, such that, hey, there are a number of different points of data that we have. How do we standardize those so that we can compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges? So one of the things that we do on a regular basis, and you may have these throughout your organization, data flows. Very simple concept. Hey, let's put some graphics on a screen. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. Let's document it so that we can identify where it's coming from, where it's going to, what format it's in. And at a very high level, someone looking at this can say, all right, I understand sort of where it's coming from and where it's going to. I don't need to understand that, hey, we're pulling apart that file and we're using pipe delimited files and we got commas over here, we got this, that over there. But it gives you an idea of how that information is flowing, what data is actually flowing, and where it's going into and where it's coming out of for a specific use case. It also informs at a higher level your overall enterprise data governance, such that, hey, we know that this information is stored in this system. Is that the system of record? Is that the place where we want it to be the final resting place of that information? And then do we tell the whole organization that this is where you need to go and get it if it's that type of information? But again, just a way of documenting how information is moving throughout your organization. And again, this is preparing data for analysis. Many of you have already probably heard ETL, extract, transform, and load. Very particular process, has been ongoing for years, whether that's from SQL Server integration services. It could be all the way back to, hey, we're just moving flat files around, we're downloading from the FTP site, and somebody goes and sucks that information into a system somewhere. But it's that whole process of extracting it from a source location, transforming and cleansing it so that it becomes more usable, maybe has some context to it, and then loading it into a place for it where it can be analyzed or added to other data to, again, support the decision-making process. ETL has evolved as well. So now there is ELT and there's ELLT. So these processes continue to evolve, and along with the tools that are available. Again, the reason for the evolution of the tools and the processes is that data continues to grow. So there are other processes that maybe do a little bit less of a full ETL, sort of do some light extraction, and can be applied in different use cases than full ETL tools. But again, point being, we're living in a fluid world of data that continues to evolve. sure some of you may have run into some of these issues in the past. Some cleansing examples as part of your ETL process. Standardizing client names. It is 2020, almost 2021, and this is still an issue that we see with law firms to this day. That, hey, we know we have 4 different client names. They got opened up in different offices. The client got opened in different offices. There's a couple of different changes. One was incorporated, one was company, one didn't have, the type of company in it. And standardizing that information obviously can have important ramifications for your organization where, hey, we opened up 10 new clients last week and they were all in Fortune 500, but actually it turns out you only opened up 3. The names are just a little bit differently spelled. I'm sure many organizations have solved that particular issue, but there are other cleansing examples out there, standardization examples that right now may be being solved in your organization as, hey, we can clean that up prior to giving it to our analysts or to those decision makers that need to see it. But hey, maybe we take that next step in 2021, which says let's go back in the process a little bit and make sure that there are controls in place such that we don't have to worry about cleaning it up, because from the source location where it's being generated, we're handling the process of deduplicating things or making sure that things aren't being opened up multiple times. So again, it's a complex web of here's the data, here's the process that we're trying to manage that data with, here's the impact on the organization. How do we manage all of that process? How do we turn that into a governance structure or a framework that allows us to rely more heavily upon the data and maybe sort of improve our overall data governance and data quality throughout the organization? So some types of analysis. And now you found the data, you've wrangled it, you've cleansed it, you're at a point now, hey, we are confident in that data. So what are some of the types of analysis that you can do? Descriptive is probably one you're most familiar with, is what is happening? How many matters did we open last week? How many conflict searches did we run? How many documents are in the document management system? So that is maybe just managing ongoing operations. But it could also be, hey, how's the firm doing from a financial perspective? How much money came in last week or yesterday? Again, reports, dashboards, things that organizations have been using for years and years, describing what is going on with the organization. Diagnostic, why is that happening? So this is taking the next step down into that data. It's not just what is happening, why is it happening? Let me take a look at the details of the matters that have been opening in that particular office, and why are we opening more of that type of matter? Or why do we have a spike in conflict searches in this particular location? Is it because we brought in a lateral attorney and we have some new clients opening up in that particular jurisdiction or that particular office? What is the reason behind the data changes that we are seeing within dashboards, reports, etc.? Then that next piece, that predictive, and this is somewhat the magic ball, magic 8 ball or the crystal ball. How do we project what may be happening in January of next year based upon what has happened in the last 15 Januaries? Or how do we predict what jurisdiction we should really be thinking about doing this type of law practice in based upon the judges in that jurisdiction? Or, hey, there's going to be an administration change. What is that going to look like for how we manage cases in this particular location? How do we predict those things based upon the data that we have, based upon data that we purchase? And again, whole set of tools out there to help on the predictive analysis side. And then prescriptive, maybe takes that predictive another step further. How do we sort of run scenarios to say, what is the best decision to make based upon the data that we have? So a little bit different than predictive, gives you, hey, here are the results. If you made the same decision on 100,000 times, here's the most likely result that would come from that. So again, all of these tools are, all these types of analysis based upon having good data to work with. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. So computers exist to make our lives easier, hopefully. That's originally why we did them. Hey, they aren't worried about, whether or not their kids are home from school and working remotely, not worried about taking the trash out or why the dog's barking, etc. Just to mention some of the distractions that I get on a regular basis. So the computer doesn't have those distractions. So let's use it to help do our analysis. So artificial intelligence, algorithm intelligence try to mimic human intelligence. So this is maybe trying to make decisions based upon information that comes into the AI system, whatever that is. Machine learning, and this is typically what we see most often being used, is how do we create a model that will help us to solve a problem, and how do we train that model such that an AI tool can use that model to make some predictive conclusions, or even to help us to improve our decision-making process, or even just extract data or extract value out of data to do that computer assist, where it might be cost prohibitive or time prohibitive for a human being to go and do that. One of the other pieces, just to mention, that natural language processing, we have seen that gaining some more traction in terms of interacting with data. So whether that's part of your analytics solution, hey, just allow me to speak to Siri or speak to Alexa and ask a question about the data, and have the computer figure out what I'm asking for and give me some type of information back. Alexa, how many hours did I charge in the month of November to clients, or billable time? So in that natural language processing, again, just simplifying the process of doing analysis for your end users. So what is data visualization? Again, this can be critical to doing analysis, is how do we portray it in such a way that makes it actionable and useful for users? This can go a number of different directions. There are different methods of visualizing data that are better for comparing two values, versus if we're trying to do predictive, there are better visualizations to use for doing predictive analysis than comparative analysis or descriptive analysis. I realize that I could talk about data all day, and I realize we're running up to the end of our time together, so I'm going to speed up a little bit. So some types of visualizations. There's plenty of charts and graphs that are out there. You may most be familiar with pivot tables. What we have found in our experiences, a lot of pretty graphs are great, but at some point, people want to see that data. A number of our clients, many of their knowledge workers are, yes, I trust your graph, but let me see the data so that I can verify that. So a lot of trust but verify. But different ways of visualizing data, and this isn't anything new, right? So advertising agencies do this all the time. How can we best portray our product or this service and in a way that is memorable and allows our audience to draw the right conclusions about our product? Same thing here. How do we show year over year utilization in the best way to be able to make a comparison in the shortest amount of time, and to give the user the ability to not only make intuitive decisions based upon what they see, but also to explore data in such a way, hey, if there's an anomaly, how do I go and understand what that anomaly is? So to that point, what is data exploration? So it sort of goes beyond just being able to see a report, et cetera. And a lot of that is characterized by filtering and drill down. There are other ways of doing it, but generally speaking, how do I filter out the information that is relevant to the question I'm trying to answer? And how do I get further into the details of, hey, I know the answer that it is showing me, but how do I get to a point where I understand all of the data that is leading into what I am seeing and the decision that I am making? And that can rely upon the relationships among data and among data points, and exploring those relationships such that, okay, I understand that utilization looks like this because of these things that occurred. And it might be pulling in data points like, hey, there was a holiday, or hey, this particular client has a moratorium on paying during this period of time of the year, whatever those things are. But given the ability to do that type of exploration within the tools, either from filtering or drill down, hey, I clicked into that office. Now I just want to see the attorneys that are in that office, and let's talk about, or let's see information about the types of clients, types of matters, how much revenue is coming in for those locations. So again, allows you to, beyond just looking at a static graph, gives your users and knowledge workers the ability to drill into those pieces and gain more insights and more actionable intelligence around the information that you're providing to them. So, like I said, we've been sort of on a journey with some firms and what to do with data analytics. I think the point that we've gotten to at this point, when we first started 5-6 years ago, it was some market shaping. Hey, what does data analysis for a law firm mean? How do we start on that journey? How do we gather data? How do we make sure data is high quality? I think we've gotten to the point now where clients that we work with and firms that we talk to, everyone has some type of solution, whether that's, hey, you know what, Microsoft gave us some Power BI licenses, and we put that out there, and we've got some great dashboards that we're working with. Or you could be further along, hey, we're using master data management tools to manage a catalog of all the information that we have and curating it and making sure that it's of high quality and putting that in people's hands to work with. I think where we have gotten to the point where we're building specific use cases. Hey, it's not just, hey, we have all this data and we want to do something with it. But hey, we have this one problem, whether that's something like case alerts. Hey, we've got all these subscriptions and it takes 10 people to manage all of these subscriptions, and the attorneys want the information more quickly, et cetera. How do we streamline that, improve that process? And there are analytics tools that can help you to do that. Or it might be, hey, you know what, we need to get a handle on all of our information from an information governance and records management perspective. How do we manage ongoing disposition, knowing that we don't have unlimited funds, and we need to make some decisions around what we can get rid of, what's ready to be gotten rid of. How do we get a tool that allows us to import all of the information that we have around that, whether it's our third-party vendors that are storing that information? How do we get all that information and do some what-if scenarios? We destroy this stuff in February, what happens to our costs for the rest of the year, et cetera. So where we have gotten to is we focus on solving specific problems or answering specific questions, in addition to, you know what, you need to worry about enterprise information and data governance at a high level, but how do we use these tools in a intelligent, tactical way to solve individual use cases? And if you have an analytics platform, any of the tools that we talked about earlier, it's a matter of sort of assessing those tools. Here's where we're trying to get to. What are the right tools to put into play to get us to that point? And this will be the subject of some of our further webinar in this series. Specific use cases, how do we gather that information? How do we make sure it's high quality information? How do we visualize it in such a way that makes it useful to our users? And then how do we what is the ongoing process of evolving that solution so that it continues to stay relevant, continues to keep up with new and varied data sources, and continues to add value to a particular business process or to the firm as a whole. So I think I've alluded to some of these pieces throughout the course of our webinar, but some of the things to think about and things that we think about all the time, and maybe some of the things that wake me up in the middle of the night, are some critical aspects that impact your ability to do analysis. And that is accuracy, completeness, consistency, uniqueness, and timeliness. I'm sure all of us at some point maybe have made a decision in our lives that we relied upon some inaccurate information. I just did this yesterday. My son's flag football team, I had inaccurate information as to who was going to play. So I set the starting lineup for a kid who didn't come yesterday. So referring to whether or not the data is correct and accurately represents what it should be. This can be difficult. I'm sure some of you have use cases or problems that are in your mind right now as I talk about that. The accuracy may be an issue concerned with, hey, we have a lot of legacy data. We're trying to use that legacy data to make a particular decision about whether or not we go after this client or this type of law, whatever the case might be. We can't rely upon that information because at the time we were using a system that had this issue that we worked around, but now it has led to this overall data accuracy concern that we have of that historical data. So making sure that that data is accurate, support high quality decision making and data driven decision making, critical piece. Sorry. One of the things we hear more and more about is this completeness. Okay, we have pieces of the picture and we can draw a good inference from those pieces, but we can't get to the full picture. We need these other pieces of information. So the completeness is also a critical component. Decisions can be made upon incomplete data, but why would you do that if you can get all of the data and all the information that you need? So that completeness can be a significant challenge. And I guess what we see most recently is, again, the accessibility of data continues to improve. So getting the complete picture, we have seen is getting a little bit easier in terms of being able to pull multiple data points in. But again, you have to worry about these other components as well. Uniqueness, timeliness, etc. I think the timeliness is the other one that we see most often as in a challenge. Yes, we have that data, but hey, we're a global firm, and when it gets created in Japan, we have to worry about how do we get that into folks' hands when the sun rises up in New York City. It may also be that you're relying upon third-party vendors for this information and making sure that you can get that information from the third-party vendor, marry it to information that you have within the firm, and do all that in a timely fashion such that you can make that information available. And to make a critical decision, can you get it to the attorneys in the timeline that they need it in order to make a quick decision or make a quick, accurate decision? So all things to think about. So why would you think about all those challenges? To get to the top of the pyramid and gain wisdom from your information and data that's within your organization. So the pyramid that you see here, bottom is the data. Everybody works on data, information, whatever you want to call it. That is the data that you consume, that you generate as an organization. That moves up the pyramid to information. All right, we've got ones and zeros, we've got raw data, we've got rows and columns, we've got documents. How does that become information and meaning added to that data? And then how do you move further up to say, all right, I've got this information, how do we turn that into knowledge such that you're adding context to it and saying, all right, I see that information. This is all the clients that we opened up in the past 6 months. How do we get to knowledge about how is our firm evolving and where are the trends that we need to spot and the need to capitalize on coming in 2021? And then to get to the top of that pyramid, using tools, using complete data, pulling data points in from multiple locations gets to that wisdom. So you are the Dalai Lama sitting on top of the mountain saying, hey, this is where we need to go in 2021 based upon all of these things and all of this knowledge, information, and data that we have throughout the organization. So again, data is a journey. You've seen a lot of different icons and words and buzzwords and terms. I'm sure everyone is on a journey with data. If you're just starting, there's probably looks like there's a lot to do. And how do you tackle that elephant in the room? One bite at a time or one particular project at a time. But the idea here is at the very bottom, you're trying to understand your data. At the very top, you're an organization that uses high quality data pulled from any number of sources and using that to drive decisions. Again, for those reasons that we saw at the beginning, you are 23 times more likely to gain business or retain clients or be more profitable. Again, getting to a point where you can rely upon the data that you have and that you're generating, and that everyone throughout the organization has the tools and the understanding of that data to be able to make data-driven decisions. So we're getting real close to some of the trends that we see. This is specific to Click, but some things that you might be running into come 2021. Intuitive design is the name of the game. So a lot of tools out there can visualize data. What are the best ones for an intuitive design? What makes it the easiest to be able to allow your users to make intuitive decisions and to intuitively understand? I'm just going to keep using the word intuitively on this slide. How do you craft a user experience that gives the user the ability to make timely decisions based upon accurate data, so that a decision is made that benefits the organization in a timely fashion? So it's sort of also gone from self-service to self-sufficiency. So putting tools into the hands of your knowledge workers and then giving them the ability to evolve those tools, use those tools in such a way that they could continue to support business processes going forward. And then how do you do all of that in a situation where everyone, or a majority of people are, or 1 out of 2, as you can see right there from Gartner, is working remotely? Talk quickly about data governance. Another, I guess, trend that we see is we have all this data. We've got a lot of outside counsel guidelines, et cetera. We need to secure that data based upon what our clients are asking us. But how do we really sort of dig into some of those additional issues that we have with our data, or challenges that we have with our data, in terms of, hey, we define clients in a number of different ways. We define active versus inactive in a number of different ways. Our process for new business intake needs to evolve to capture some new data points. How do we take the information about lateral attorneys that are coming into the organization, or evaluating those lateral attorneys? How do we make that how do we support that process with data? And some of that takes a high level cross-cutting approach to data standards. Hey, how do we define those things? How do we get to a point where everybody is saying the same thing when they say an active client, or a new matter, or responsible attorney, or any number of terms throughout the organization? And then data stewardship. Once you get data to a clean, highly reliable state, how do you manage that over time? And that's sort of the stewardship and the curation of that data. And then metadata management. So metadata describes your data. Hey, it's in this system. It gets updated on this basis. It has these characteristics to it. How do you manage that? How do you fold that into a way of doing data governance throughout the organization, so that when information evolves or changes, how do you know that where to go get it, what it is, in a timely fashion? Do we have a framework for that? Won't spend too much time on this. We are right at 1 o'clock. Number of different things that you need to be concerned with for enterprise data management as part of your overall data governance strategy. So that's us in Outsource. That is our introduction to things that need to be concerned with, either have been concerned with or going to be concerned with in more detail and in greater volume come 2021, as we continue to deal with the quintillion bytes of information that are generated on every day. So if you'd like to learn more, or you have questions, hey, this is where we are in our journey. One part of our data analytics practice is our DNA labs, where we like to take new use cases and partner with firms to figure out how can we get to a solution that benefits your organization. Let's talk. We're happy to talk about this, happy to add our expertise around these things. Thank you all. If there are any questions, I can take them now. I know we're running up on time. All right, I don't think there's any questions. So hopefully learned something today. Thanks again for attending. We'll send some follow-up to this webinar and continue the series in January. Happy holidays to everybody, and thanks again for joining our webinar.